Hello and welcome to session 5 of our Tarot on 2020 Facing the Pandemic Crisis series of videos live on Facebook. I hope you can join me live or in the recording. That's absolutely fine. I'm putting these sessions together into the units folder of the Facebook group so that you'll be able to find them in the Facebook group itself. Under the units tab, however you access that, and hopefully we might be able to archive them in some other way. Good morning to Rebecca in Australia, and good afternoon to those in the States, Canada. Good evening to those in the UK and Europe, and if you're probably in China, Japan or anywhere else, then you should really be in bed. So what we're going to cover today is we're going to cover reading for yourself and just talk a bit about that. We've got our regular bedtime story as we go up the tree of life with Alistair Crowley in Wake World, and I also just wanted to start by mentioning for purposes of the recording a couple of the books that I referenced in one of the earlier sessions. And hello to Derek joining us. And to Hannah. Hello Hannah, we've not talked for a while. So what we're going to do is quickly mention a couple of the other books from previous sessions, so we can keep a rolling tally of where we're at with references. The Tarot Association site, tarotassociation.net, also has a list of recommended books. Hello to Cornwall as well. So I mentioned in the session that I talked about a bit of dream interpretation, the Jungian Dream Interpretation book by James A. Hall, which you can get secondhand. This is my most favourite book as well for describing Jungian terms in just the first few pages, which is worth the cost of the book alone. It really clarifies Jungian terms in a deep way, as far as I understand it at least, but also in a very accessible way as well. It's really a useful book. And hello to Charlotte as well. Hello. So that's that book. The other book I mentioned but didn't have to hand is the Jungian Tarot by the late Sally Nichols. This is more a book about her interpretation of the major arcana through a sort of Jungian perspective. It isn't really a book about what Jung thought about tarot or divination or anything else. So here, but it is a classic book, and it relates to archetypes. I think that's Kali. Yes, then we have Kali. And so forth throughout the whole book. So it's a fascinating read. Yeah, I prefer Meditations on the Tarot, which is from a sort of theosophical point of view, and that's a quite thick book that goes through the majors in a very particular way and draws in lots and lots of other references. But if you want a book from a sort of Jungian perspective, then this is probably one of the few books that's been written of its type. So that's those two books just referenced and shouted out. Some of the methods I'm going to look at today are in the book I wrote with co-author Tali Goodwin, called Practical Tarot Techniques. Now, just an insight into the publishing world. What happened was this book was first published as Tarot Face to Face. It's exactly the same book, just with a different cover and title. And we thought it was very clever to call it Tarot Face to Face, because it's all about how to read for other people, how to read for yourself, how to read when someone is a cynic, how to read in a crowd, how to read when you can only stand up and you've only got your deck in your hand, and so on and so on. So it's a grab bag of practical techniques with the first time we used our 3-minute method of teaching tarot in the very thin first part of the book, and then the rest of it is techniques for using different decks, using reading for parties, reading for groups, and so forth. So Unfortunately, what happened was it didn't sell very well. The cover's a bit bland as well. It is a mirror, so you get the idea face to face. And it says using the cards in your everyday life, as if you might use the cards in some other life. It doesn't tell you how to use the cards or even reading the cards or anything. So it sold very slowly. So when it went out of print, which it did, so it sold enough to go out of print, they came to us and suggested we change the title, and so it became the far more accurately titled Practical Tarot Techniques, and it sold very well as Practical Tarot Techniques. Your essential toolkit for better readings. It tells you what you're going to get by on the cover. By reading the book, you are going to get better readings by learning practical tarot techniques, which are presented as a toolkit within this book. So a far better, clearer title, and that is the only change. These two books are identical in content, but just one different cover, and it just shows you how important a title and a cover can actually be. This was, far too clever for its own good, which, yeah, that's an issue. Okay, and so what we're going to do is look at reading for yourself, and I'll share a few methods that I use for that, and perhaps people can comment in our live session today or in the recording, if you get to this point, what your particular methods or tricks for reading for yourself are. Someone also asked about questions. How do you frame a question, particularly for Lenormand, where the question is really important? So I'll just start with that, a few tips and tricks for questions. And some of these are from NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, which I also teach and utilize. Applied to tarot, but they're basically things that I found work over the last 30-40 years, so I do know that they actually generally work if you use them properly. So the first thing is, if someone can't think of a question, so let's look at questions first, okay, then we'll look at reading for yourself, because they're sort of tied together. If someone comes to you and says, I don't really have a question, that is fine. You can say, I'm going to do a general reading. And I usually use a Celtic cross for a general reading. My particular way of reading it is slightly different to other people's. So if you read Secrets of the Celtic Cross on Kindle, I've written about where the Celtic cross comes from. It's not Celtic, it's not a cross, it's not ancient. It was a Golden Dawn outer method that Waite purloined into pictorial key and then mistook some of the instructions, meaning that everyone's gotten confused about it ever since, because Waite was not complete in how he described how you read it. So I tend to use a Celtic cross for general readings. I won't go into metaphor readings, but that's a very I use that an awful lot, and that's covered in Tarosophy, and also it's covered in Practical Tarot Techniques, how to turn any question into a spread no matter what. Even if the person only has a feeling, you can turn that into a metaphor and then do a spread based on the metaphor from their feeling. If they just have, I feel sad and I want to know why or what to do about it, you can turn the sadness into a feeling, the feeling into a metaphor, the metaphor into a spread, and then read as if you're reading for the feeling itself, which is very powerful. So here's some very simple tricks. If somebody says, I've got lots of things going on, sorry, that just reminded me of another method, but we'll come back to that, called the in-between word. So if someone said, I don't really have a question, then one question you can ask them, if you feel that you want a specific question, is, if you woke up late at night, what might have woken you up? What might you be thinking about that might keep you awake or wake you up in the middle of the night? So by saying that you can get something that's sort of anxious or anxiety provoking, and you can start from that question or that theme or that area, and then maybe work to a second question from that point, but at least you've got something more specific. So what thought might, so you present it the other way around. You don't say what thought would wake you up. You say, imagine you've woken up in the middle of the night suddenly and you've got something on your mind. What would that be? So you put them in the position first consciously, and then their unconscious can often provide a reason, or their conscious can provide a reason as to why they would have woken up. But you put the question the other way around. So you're woken up in the middle of the night, you suddenly sat bolt upright, what might be playing on your mind? And that can quite often get a question out of the person or a theme. The opposite to that is when your mind drifts, where does it drift to? If your mind was drifting now, what sort of things might you be thinking of? And then again, we can gradually sort of narrow their state down into a very specific question. Make sense? So that's two ways of asking and eliciting a question, a specific question. Another thing which is more to do with the sort of counselling type approach or solution and outcome orientated approach, where you drive towards a very defined outcome in all of the work you're doing, you can apply to tarot too. And the question, the sort of magic question in that field is, if I had a magic wand and could wave it and you left the room feeling totally different, in what way would you know that you were feeling different because of the magic wand? So it's called the magic wand question, and basically you're giving them carte blanche to actually say, well, I'd feel free, or I'd feel happy, or I'd feel whatever, and then you can ask the cards, how does this person go about having the magic wand waved for them? You can tell them that you don't really have a magic wand and they still have to do a lot of work or whatever it may be from the reading, but the magic wand question is a very powerful one for coming up with some sort of defined outcome to which you then read the tarot towards. Okay, so in terms of questions and reading for yourself, obviously I was just finishing a couple of months ago the third book in the Secrets of the Thoth Tarot trilogy and looking at Aleister Crowley's readings, and hellfire were they biased. His from the outside you could see what he was driving towards, and how he interpreted the cards is exactly how he would have wanted to have interpreted his readings. So even Aleister Crowley wasn't immune to a little bit of bias in his readings. Just to answer Marcy, any of those questions can be used for Oracle decks, Lenormand or Tarot. For Lenormand, we have to have a very specific question. I never, or I don't think I hardly ever do, never say never, but a general reading with Lenormand. If I do the Grand Tableau, and I specifically look at health and money and relationship and learning and past, future, and spirituality within the Grand Tableau, because you can do that with Lenormand. If it's a general question, just give me a general reading, the Grand Tableau is perfect for that. However, if you're only using a few cards in a Lenormand reading, which again I sort of advise against, but it's quite okay to use 3 card readings, 5 card readings, 9 card square readings in Lenormand, that's fine. I always like to have a very specific question, and usually a very positive question as well. So how can I do such and such? What do I need to know about such and such, rather than something framed in the negative. How can I not be sad anymore? I prefer to turn that towards how can I be increasingly happy, and what steps can I do that with. There is a method that I use called the next step method, which gives people the very next step, the initial step they need to do as soon as they leave the building, as well, which I find very powerful when working towards object orientated, object orientated is programming, outcome orientated is human being programming. So yes, it applies to either deck. But Crowley showed a lot of bias, and we all do. Of course, we are going to be biased. So there are a few ways, different ways around that. But you do have to accept that if you're doing the reading, you're doing the reading, and really incorporate and utilise the fact that it's you that's doing the reading. There are a lot of other methods, but we'll just cover some very basic ones today. So one first method is to simply lay down the cards in the sort of reading that you would do for somebody else, but literally put down the cards on the table as if you were reading for somebody else, and then stand up, go to the other side of the table and look at the cards physically from the other side of the table and read from that position. Read to yourself as if you were reading to yourself, which you are doing, but do it from the viewpoint, the physical viewpoint of the other person. It really does shake the reading up quite a bit when you do that. Even if you have the person sat next to you when you do readings, because you like to collaborate and be both on the same side of the table, simply shift your chair or put on a different jumper or anything to move your position from your usual position to do a reading to the other person's position. And it's enough if you often do readings for other people, you're so used to doing that sitting in the other person's position is enough to give you a little bit of an edge in reading for yourself. Very simple technique, but it's really powerful if you can, live with your own sort of feeling of silliness of just like literally moving your bottom from one place to another, which may not seem very like it's going to make a big difference. It's a bit like sort of singing in a room to yourself or something, but it really does make a big difference. The other trick that I use an awful lot is to use another book. Read the interpretations from another book. Don't read it for yourself, just almost go by the little white book, and start from there, because then you're a little bit out of your own bias before you can try and bring it back in to roughly the way you're going to see things. And usually that's enough of a jump to do that. My favourite book for that, the book that I have by my desk all of the time, is Tarot Flip, this very little book, but it is my favourite book for tarot reading per se, because what we did with this book is we analysed a lot of people's, like hundreds of people's, unconscious keywords for the cards. I won't go into how we did that, but we ended up with, for example, the King of Swords upright is deliberation, reversed is thoughtlessness. And by fixing very specific keywords and literally putting what you say, you see there, what you say, and it says the King of Swords is at the top of his game and counsels that you take time to deliberate your options before acting. It's very hard to get out of your bias if you want to look at the King of Swords as do it now, and actually this book reads out to you, you have to take time to deliberate your actions. It's very difficult to then jump from that and say, oh, I'm just going to totally ignore that and do what I want, because it becomes very clear. So this is also the reversal as well. So thoughtlessness is the reversal of that. And it says, what you say, the King of Swords is least happy upside down, when confusion or other factors can lead to thoughtlessness. Take a moment to consider the situation. So again, even reversed, it still take time. and we have some other keywords that we built up from other places, and a strange oracular title, which in this case is A Judge Waiting on the Jury to Speak, to again give you a sort of enigmatic sense to the card's core meaning. And those meanings were distilled from tens of thousands of hours of other people's tarot readings in real life, that we just had to find a special method to extract it out of hundreds of people's brains and then turn it on its head, which is why it's called tarot flip, to come up with very simple keywords that often may seem counterintuitive or may make absolute sense, but I always refer to this book when I'm doing my own readings for myself. I have another method which I'll show you in a second, but that's what I tend to do. I go for that. Before I do my actual method, the other way of doing it is to refer to another oracle entirely, one that you might not be familiar with. I use, again, here's another plug for the Astrological Oracle. There is an app for it on iPhones by Lynn Birkbeck, and it's called the Astrological Oracle. And this is the Sabian symbols. So, and they're always laugh out loud funny. I've just opened it up to Taurus 16 degrees, which is a bit of bull, and the oracle is an old man attempting vainly to reveal the mysteries. Well, there we go. Very, very funny Sabian symbols. As I say, these always make me laugh out loud because they're always so appropriate to an oracle. So here we go, an old man attempting vainly to reveal the mysteries. And it says, no quick fix or easy answer. So there we go. Yeah, very funny. Say this, the app as well, always makes me laugh, because the answer is so straightforward and it's phrased in such a enigmatic, not enigmatic, but a sort of timeless, classic, vintage way that it's just always hilarious. I'll cover court cards referring to people tomorrow. Okay, that's a really good question, and a green tarot there. I'll cover court cards tomorrow. We will talk about court cards and how you tell and what the problems are, because I have a lot to say about all of that, which we cover in Tarosophy. Actually has a good section on why you can't read the court cards and how to, because you cannot read court cards. There's an intrinsic problem with reading court cards about us as human beings, so we'll talk about tomorrow, and that's Tarosophy. Leah, which book were we talking about? The Astrological Oracle. I think I showed. It's now self-published, so it's now actually, it looks like this one. It's the same book. Exactly the same book, but in a far sort of wider format, larger format, a Halloween Jester. Okay. If you have any specific questions I don't cover, just add them in the thread or new thread in the TP group, and I'm sure we can cover them in a. It looks like we're going to be doing these for a long time, so we've got plenty of time to cover anything and to interact. Okay then, so right, my actual method of reading is far more conversational. It takes a little bit of practice, but what I tend to do with the cards is I shuffle them. So if I want to shuffle them, and I'd say, tell me something about how to use cards for reading for yourself. What's important to remember? And then I just simply, I can do it in a number of ways. Let's just turn the card over. Okay. So I then look at the card and I hear it talking to me, and I say, so to read the cards for yourself, I have to sort of look at the card in order to get it to talk to me. I can't do it that way, like looking at the screen. So Five of Pentacles. Okay, to read for yourself, sometimes you have to feel as if you're sort of removed from the answer, that you can't really get to the answer, that you feel somehow that you're missing something. Oh, well, that's very interesting cards. So what's the way around that? Well, the way around that is the Six of Cups. Okay, so it's like giving a gift then, is it? It's like perhaps going back to childhood. Oh, I see, a childhood sense of innocence. You have to have like an open mind and wait for the tarot to almost give you a gift like a flower pot. Okay, well, I understand that. So, okay, so you might feel on the outside, but you have to have this sort of open mind. How do you do that? Oh, right. Okay, so you have to put your thoughts away. Ah, right. Okay, so you have to put all of your thoughts away before you start. Okay, well, how can I do that? How can I do that now? Okay, well, by weighing up your resources. Oh, okay, well, I'm not quite sure what that means. What do you mean by weighing things up? Is that a way of settling my mind, putting those swords out of the way, those ideas, so I can get my childhood innocence back? Oh, okay, so nurture it, so feel. Okay, so if I feel like embodied. Ah, oh, embodied, right, okay, embodied, right, okay. So if I go physical, really think of my body and not my thoughts, and really embody, and then I remember all of the things I used to do as a child. Oh no, now I remember how I used to read cards when I was really starting off. So okay, so oh, okay, I can get into that state now. Right, okay. And that's the answer to the question. And how can I go about reading the cards for myself? But you can use that method with any question. Once you get a little bit more adroit with the cards themselves, and just have a conversation with them. And if you don't understand the card, tell the deck you don't understand it, incorporate and utilize your state, don't deny it, and then pull another card and see if that will explain it. If it seems to go totally off tangent, then just say to the cards, I really don't understand what you're telling me. A bit like when a friend sometimes tries to tell you something and you just really don't get it. Accept that and say, I'll come back another time and perhaps we can have another chat later. And really engage with that. Evelyn says she usually pulls from the middle of the deck. That's another good way of doing it, actually. I have a demo of me doing this with the Raziel Tarot, I think, or I think it was called that by Robert Place and Rachel Pollack, and I sort of shuffle them, hold them like that, then turn that card over, turn it back, and then shuffle and stack them straight into the middle of the deck while holding them like that with the camera sort of pointed down. So however you feel comfortable talking to your deck, and different decks will have very different voices, as you know, it's like, you know, sometimes you'll know a certain friend to get advice from and another friend not to get advice from, because you know that they may have their own feelings about that particular thing. Yeah, you can use different decks. I also use, for slightly more deeper questions, the Tildwick Tarot that I demonstrated or just briefly showed a few days ago for my own readings, because I like wandering around the house that the Tildwick Tarot lays out, like a Dungeons and Dragons adventure, and actually finding myself in different places and different feelings within that. And it's a very enigmatic and not spooky, and that's not the word, timeless sort of almost haunted sort of deck. You feel like you're haunting the house, but that's a deck I use for my own self readings. The other thing, again, in using different methods, I use the I Ching, and I've always used the I Ching for a very long time, and I use the James Legge translation most of the time, and this is the one Crowley used as well, and Crowley used the I Ching an awful lot. I used to use coins. I went for a while with the actual yarrow sticks because it's a beautiful meditation method of casting yarrow sticks and then separating them out in between your fingers and holding them and counting whether you've got one left or not, and then drawing a line and so on. Geomancy is another nice way because you can do that with a pen and a bit of paper. I also now more often use Stephen Karsh's Total I Ching book. I tend to use them in parallel. I usually read this one first and then the interpretation from this one, which is sort of poetic, shamanic and contemporary, whereas this is like the first dry translation of the I Ching itself. But you know, again, you'll find different methods have different voices for you. Okay, so we've covered sort of reading for yourself very briefly. What else was I going to talk about? Oh, another way of doing it is what I call tricking the oracle. And this is a good practice method if you're teaching tarot as well. What you do is you introduce the idea. You have to introduce one idea which is called linking words. Now, linking words are words we use in everyday sentences. For example, I might use it when I say this because I am now using the linking words a lot, and when you use them you'll notice that the sentence doesn't end because it's possible to continue the sentence using the linking words because they are often used, and when we use them there's always a reason for using them, and so on. So, and, because, when, whilst, all of these words are linking words. And what you do with a student is you say, right, okay, take a card and I want you to talk about that card, even repeating yourself. It's not a game of just a minute where you have to avoid deviation and repetition. You can just talk about the card, but you must use linking words and not end the sentence. And you must describe only the things you can see on the card. And what tends to happen for the student is, and this is why it's called tricking the oracle, is they'll look at the card and they'll say, if I can do it this way, if I put it this side, can I see it better? There we go. Right, so I'll try this. I see a man, he is leaning against the staves because he is carrying them somewhere to a town that is in the distance, and he is wearing 2 boots, and I can see that he's got yellow hair with thatched hair like the thatched roofs of the houses that I can see when I look very carefully into the card. I also see the fact that there are branches and they have little things coming off them which are leaves, because I know that eventually everything, even if it's been cut up, comes to light. Oh, I know that everything, even when it's been cut up, comes to life. And it tricks eventually a sentence as your conscious mind gets overwhelmed and is churning over what you can see, but you're still forcing your eyes to look and you've been told to keep speaking. Eventually what will happen, and quite often people have very strange experiences with that, it will trick an oracle, a sentence, out of their mouth. And it's really powerful, and it also shows, particularly new students, that there's more in their brain and they have more oracular ability than they know themselves, and it's already there. So it's a really nice teaching method to teach students how to do that and to trick an oracle. And I usually, if I'm doing that in a workshop or at a conference, have people sat faced each other and get them to do an oracular linking word exercise with each other until the other person, or the person actually speaking themselves, recognizes when they suddenly flip into that oracular point. Sometimes that could be a whole story. Sometimes they could say, and it reminds me of the song Welcome to the Jungle by Bon Jovi, and that's the oracular moment. Something that suddenly has some other meaning or can be used as a symbol for their situation, question, or reading. Make sense? And you can do it yourself. Again, you have to get over the fact that you're speaking to yourself to a deck of cardboard, or that you're burbling out in a room just by yourself until you say something strange. But sometimes it'll give you a shiver because it will just happen and just come out. And there's lots of NLP type methods of tricking that, but that's a nice simple one to use for tarot students and yourself if you're doing your own reading with a one card. It's a brilliant way of doing a one card reading for yourself as well. Okay then, so I think we've whipped through in 35 minutes. Just a few ideas for reading for yourself, asking a question, the magic wand, what keeps you up at night, where does your mind wander to, using other systems that you're not familiar with, switching your position to the reading itself, using a fixed book, for example, Tarot Flip, or the little white book that comes. It's also a good way of finding and reading the little white book, because sometimes people don't read them. And I'd have to say, just between us, I really don't like it when people answer someone's question in the Facebook group where they say, how do I go about reading this deck? And someone just blasé says, oh, first of all, throw away the little white book. You don't need that. And it's such a ill-considered, unconsidered, lazy response, and I really think it sort of detracts from all of the potential that you might find in the little white book. Read the little white book, it makes no sense, then throw it away. That's fine. But don't just start off with, oh, throw away, your intuition will find a way, because 2 years later that person is still looking at the cards and thinking, I don't know if I'm doing this right, I don't know if this is my intuition. And so it's far better to teach fairly fixed methods that trick the person into their own voice first, and then you can get more flexible with it. But yeah, sometimes a little white book can get round your own bias by just sort of slapping you in the face with it. Okay, now I hope you've got your trees of life at the ready, because we're about to continue on with our reading of our bedtime story, which is Wake World by Aleister Crowley in the book Contes on Pax, a collection. And this is a allegory of Lola Daydream being taken by her fairy prince on a journey through various palaces. If you're not interested in a bedtime story, then I'm not going to cover any more methods from this point, but I'm going to cover how Crowley has hidden the Kabbalah and Tarot, more importantly, into this piece of work. Because I'm also reading it because I like reading it, and also because it might encourage people to go and read some of Crowley's stuff and some other people's stuff, including even my own, where the Kabbalah and Tarot is actually embedded in the actual story. So if you recall, we had got to the fairy prince taking Lola Daydream into the first hall, and it said, what did it say? It said, welcome to my palace, blah blah blah, the horrid things, and then he said, come on, this is only the servants' hall, and that's where we got to. So there were the most horrid things about everywhere, black beetles and cockroaches and goodness knows what, but they can't hurt when the fairy prince is there. I think a little girl would be eaten though if she went in there alone. So it's quite interesting that Crowley is referring to Malkuth at this point, at the bottom of the Tree of Life, and he actually says Domus X, Porta, meaning door, so Domus X, which is house 10, meaning, and Porta, meaning door. And he also refers to the 4 elements as well, because we had the bathroom, the bedrooms, the kitchens, and the sort of offices of Malkuth. And you'll notice as well he's stuck in something quite interesting, the fact that but they can't hurt when the fairy prince is there, and that is referring to the Qliphoth. And the Qliphoth is the sort of noise or waste that is made when you, for example, if you are carving something out of wood and you get the shavings and the sawdust as the byproduct of actually making something. So the Kabbalists saw that Kabbalah reflects that when God created everything, when the divine sort of withdrew from everythingness to make a nothingness, and then in the nothingness everything came out, that there was waste, that there was noise, that there was friction, that there was it's the closest form to evil within the Kabbalistic system itself, but it's not really evil. It's something that provides a shell for things while they grow and then shatters when the light comes through them. And we see this in our life all of the time. We have Qliphothic entities. I'm reminded of the James and the Glass Elevator in the Willy Wonka stories, where at one point they're looking out of the glass elevator at this weird realm of smoke and voices and things. It's very spooky. And I think Willy Wonka says something like, this is all of the what ifs and maybes all collected, and it's sort of like the abyss on Tree of Life, that that these are all of the things that are not complete, that were started like half-formed desires. And the evilness of the Qliphoth is when you get caught by them. And Crowley says, I think a little girl would be eaten, though, if she went in there alone. He's meaning the little girl being our soul, our spirit, our virgin self, that when we are forced into the world, then unless we are connected to the fairy prince, i.e. Tiferet, our higher self, for just the purposes of this particular description, unless we have this higher nature that we connect to, then we might get eaten by the Qliphoth. We might think that all of this is real and all of this is evil and all of this is a waste. So so even in these little things, and this is the trick with a lot of these allegories, that sometimes even throwaway sentences do have a lot of very deliberate depth in them. These have been placed there very specifically. So let's continue. Then he said, come on, this is only the servants' hall. Nearly everybody stays there all their lives. And I said, kiss me. So he said, every step you take is only possible when you say that. This union with the angel. We came into a dreadful dark passage again, and Crowley has put via tau v crux, and that's basically path tau, or the cross, which is the Hebrew letter tau, and that's the English for it. And you'll see that on your Tree of Life diagram from Malkuth, the path with the universe or the world card going straight up out of Malkuth. And so this is the path that they're going to go through. We came into a dreadful dark passage again, so narrow and low that it was like a dirty old tunnel, and yet so vast and wide that everything in the whole world was contained in it, because it's the world tarot card that corresponds to it on the Tree of Life. We saw all the strange dreams and awful shapes of fear. This is Yesod that is just above it, the place of dreams. And really, I don't know how we ever got through, except that the prince called for some splendid strong creatures to guard us. There was an eagle that flew and beat his wings and tore and bit at everything that came near. And there was a lion that roared terribly, and his breath was a flame and burnt up the things, so that there was a great cloud, and rain fell gently and purely, so that he really did the things good by fighting them. Very important point. And there was a bull that tossed them on his horn, so that they changed into butterflies. And there was a man who kept on telling everyone to be quiet and not make a noise. So we came at last in the next house of the palace. Okay, so I'll just leave it there because what we have there is the 4 cherubim that we see around the world card, and really important point that they are all converted, and the Qliphoth are converted from their fearful aspect into a useful aspect, hence the idea of incorporation and utilization. So so even the body is used, the mind is used, the emotions are used, but they're all converted to a slightly higher purpose through the process of working with them. And this is the sort of zelator or alchemy of calcination at the bottom of the tree of life, where we sort of burn in all of the problems that we have, and those are part of our spiritual journey as well. They're nothing different to our spiritual journey. Spiritual journey is here right now all of the time, and that's it. But then we extend it outwards. And the man who kept on telling everyone to be quiet and not make a noise is the sign of silence that the neophyte makes when they are initiated into a magical order such as the Golden Dawn. So again, even these little side notes. There was a man who kept on telling everyone to be quiet and not make a noise, because we know that magic works, as Shakespeare said, hush, the spell's wound up. He says that in 2 different plays. And magic works, initiation works by having a sealed vessel, by keeping it within yourself while it does its work, while it does its transformation. And talking about it and yabbering about it and proclaiming it is just letting out the energy that should be internalized in order to make these changes. And all of that is part of Malkuth on the Tree of Life and the World card that contains everything, but it's still a narrow path. Again, Crowley is alluding to the biblical statement about straight and narrow is the way, but few there are that find it, all in this little verse. So there's a wealth of information just in that sort of long paragraph there about Malkuth and about the cherubim, the Qliphoth, Domus 10, Malkuth, the path of the cross, Tau going up to Yesod, the place of dreams. And this is all about the body and our human experience as well. And then we go further into the spiritual journey in the rest of the story, just this little bit here. So I hope that's of interest to you. As I continue to read this, I'm going to interpret it less, but might put something in the comments so we get the flow of the story. And I hope you'll keep your ear out for some of the illusions that might be in it, and then you can always ask in the Facebook group and we can discuss it there. What did he mean by saying this, or I thought he meant this by that, and so on, or what the hell is he talking about? Okay, so there's our bedtime story. We're going to leave Lola Daydream on the other side of the path of Tau. So we came at last to the next house of the palace, which is Domus 9, 1/8 Fundamentum, the foundation, Yesod in Hebrew, Domus 9, the 9th Sephira on the Tree of Life. Okay, and we'll find out all about that tomorrow because we've got plenty of time. Okay, thanks a lot for your time and attention. If you've got any more questions or stuff you want me to cover for tomorrow, then we are going to continue to be here. Oh, just to by the by, one of the staff at Facebook who looks after groups in the UK had commented and asked me about how this was all going, because I told them in the admin group that they run for some of the larger groups and the admins of those groups that we were doing this, that we were reading the story every night and so on, and that I too was providing some sort of continuity and maybe even a little bit of comfort, certainly it is for me, through the current times, and also that we were using both live video and units within the group functionality that we never thought we'd ever use. And so Facebook are very delighted that we're having these sessions and finding them useful, finding their system of live video and the units fitted to our particular purpose. So the Eye of Mordor has fallen upon us briefly, and hopefully we'll pass on. So thanks a lot for your time and attention. If you want to go and explore any of those books, I would encourage you to do so. It's the only place we get our revenue, other than joining the association for our video course and the magazine that I'm currently working on at the moment, the 33rd issue of the Terosophist International magazine. So and we've had some brilliant articles from some members of the group and the association, and it's been a pleasure to actually put them together. Really great articles. So thank you for your time and attention, and I look forward to seeing you same time, same place tomorrow, wherever you may be. And yeah, we'll see what the news brings us tomorrow, because it's changing hour by hour. Bye for now.